So if you're an enthusiast of early Hollywood, or maybe you just really love gothic horror,
Oh yeah, this one is for you.
then we are diving deep into one of the sneakiest intellectual property battles ever waged on the silver screen.
It's a perfect case study, really.
It involves a vampire, a director who, well, basically recycled his own work, and one of the most surprising plot twists in cinematic history.
We're going to take what seems like a simple connection between two classic films, Dracula from 1931 and Mark of the Vampire from 1935, and we're just going to pull them apart.
And show you how the real story isn't so much about bloodsuckers.
No, not at all. It's about savvy marketing and some pretty intense studio rivalry.
Okay, so let's start with that surface level similarity, because when you look at these two movies, the assumption, even for a lot of fans, is that Mark of the Vampire has to be a troll.
It makes sense on paper.
Right. You've got the same iconic star playing vampire, Bela Lugosi. You have the same director, the absolute legend, Todd Browning. Why wouldn't you assume they're connected?
Because that assumption is exactly what one studio wanted you to think. See, Dracula was a Universal Pictures product. They were the reigning champions of monster movies in the 30s.
They practically invented the genre as we know it.
Absolutely. They owned the intellectual property, the source material, and they were riding high on that success.
And when you have that kind of success, everybody else wants a piece of the pie.
Precisely. Mark of the Vampire, however, was made by MGM Studios.
A huge rival.
The huge rival. And in the wake of Universal's monster portfolio, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Invisible Man MGM was desperate to crack into that magic.
So what was their strategy?
Well, if they couldn't buy the character, they figured they'd just buy the talent. So they poached the director and the star, believing that the formula for success was in the people, not just the name.
And that's where the director, Todd Browning, makes this first really fascinating pivot. MGM thinks they're getting a brand new original horror film.
Yeah, a custom-made Universal killer, basically.
But Browning had a different idea. Maybe he was feeling nostalgic or just efficient.
He was being incredibly sneaky, is what he was doing.
Ah, right.
Instead of developing a totally new monster script, Browning decided to just remake one of his own previous films, a silent film from almost a decade earlier.
So he just dusted off an old script.
Dusted it off, gave it a fresh coat of vampire paint, and served it up.
And the original film, the source material, was London After Midnight. That name is just, it's mythical in film circles, isn't it?
It's absolute cinematic legend. London After Midnight is probably the most famous lost film.
When you say lost film, what does that mean exactly?
It means that every single known copy, every complete print of the movie has disappeared. It's gone.
Wow.
Yeah, it's considered irretrievably lost, probably destroyed in a studio vault fire, or what's more common, it just degraded into dust. That early nitrate film stock was incredibly unstable.
A literal cultural ghost. And who was the star of that ghostly original?
That would be the master of cinematic horror in disguise, Lon Chaney Sr.
The man with 1,000 faces.
That's the one. In London, After Midnight, he played this horrifying, vampire-like character called the Man in the Beaver Hat.
And Lon Chaney was famous for these elaborate, physically grotesque makeup jobs, things that were, truly disturbing for audiences back then.
Oh, absolutely. The Man in the Beaver Hat was iconic, gaunt, wide-eyed, this terrifying row of sharp teeth, and of course the top hat. It was frightening because it looked so unnatural, so physically contorted.
Okay, so Browning has this old script, this ghost of a movie, and a studio that's desperate for a monster hit. He needs a star who can rival the memory of Lon Chaney, who had sadly passed away by then.
And this is where the genius of the deception really clicks into place.
How so?
Browning performs the ultimate substitution. Instead of trying to recreate Chaney's very specific character, he recruits Bela Lugosi, who is fresh off his career-defining role as Count Dracula. He just swaps the Man in the Beaver Hat for the most famous vampire face in the world.
You can just imagine the light bulbs going off in the MGM executive offices.
Oh, yeah.
They see Bela Lugosi, they see the fangs and the cape, and they realize they've struck gold. They're thinking, forget a subtle title.
Let's just call it Mark of the Vampire and go straight for Universal's jugular. And that is exactly what they did. The title change was deliberate, immediate. It was everything. They weren't selling a remake of a lost silent film. They were selling The Return of Dracula.
Which brings us to the marketing war, because this is where the rivalry really heats up. MGM went all in on the misdirection.
They absolutely did.
They were giving the public, they were giving you every single impression that this was the next great Universal monster movie, even though it wasn't a Universal film at all.
The advertising was masterful. If you look at the posters, the lobby cards for Mark of the Vampire, they all feature Lugosi, just looming and hypnotic.
All the classic horror tropes.
The dark castle, the gothic atmosphere, the whole 9 yards. They completely masked the true nature of the film, which, as we're about to find out, was much more of a mystery than a monster mash.
So with all that savvy advertising, was it the blockbuster hit that MGM needed? Did it establish their own horror brand?
It was a respectable return. It wasn't the seismic event they were hoping for, though. It worked enough, at least on the onset, to be profitable. I think it netted them about $54,000 in profit at the time.
Which back then wasn't nothing.
Right. It was a solid B-movie success, a respectable number for a quick horror cash-in, but it wasn't a franchise starter. It made money, but it didn't redefine the genre, and it certainly didn't dethrone Universal.
But it made enough money and created enough buzz to get Universal's attention.
Oh, definitely.
They saw MGM using their star, their iconography, and they realized, hey, we need to protect our investment here.
Absolutely. Universal basically saw this and said, hold on, we own the vampire, we own Dracula. So the very next year, 1936, they released the official, legitimate sequel to the original hit, Dracula's Daughter.
And this is a perfect point to look at the difference between intellectual property and pure talent. Universal owned the name, the trademark.
But MGM had momentarily controlled the formula. The face, Lugosi, and the director Browning.
And you really see why that talent matters when you look at Dracula's Daughter, don't you?
You really do.
Yeah.
Universal have the legal right to the character, but they lacked the magic that made the original work. The sequel did okay. It was a modest success, but it failed to become a classic because it was missing both Browning and Lugosi.
They couldn't recreate that spark.
Not without the key ingredients.
And the studio obviously knew this was a problem. They tried to connect the new film back to Lugosi's performance, didn't they?
They went to almost comical lengths. They included a very brief shot of Dracula's body lying in his coffin, and they used a dummy that was explicitly designed to look a lot like Bela Lugosi.
Just a little nod to the audience?
A nod, yeah, almost begging them to accept the continuity, even without the actual star on screen.
Yeah.
But, it didn't solve the core problem. The audience wanted Lugosi, not a look-alike dummy.
It's just proof that in early Hollywood, sometimes the star power really did outweigh the actual contract defining the character.
It's the whole tension of the era wrapped up in about 5 years of horror films.
But now we have to get to the core cinematic deception. The real secret hidden inside Mark of the Vampire that makes this whole story so incredible.
The big twist.
We've established that MGM marketed it as a straight-up vampire chiller, a gothic thriller.
And for about 95% of the runtime, that is exactly what the audience sees. You get the creepy barons, the shadowy castles, the hypnotic gazes, everything you paid your money to see. It builds this incredible gothic atmosphere.
So what exactly was it then? If it wasn't a sequel and it wasn't really a Universal-style monster movie, what was it?
Well, here it is. And if you haven't seen the film, brace yourself.
Yeah.
Mark of the Vampire was not a real vampire movie at all. It wasn't supernatural.
Wait, what are you saying?
It was a classic whodunit.
A murder mystery.
A murder mystery. The central plot is all about a detective who's trying to solve this really complicated, seemingly unsolvable murder. And to get the killer to reveal themselves, he comes up with this very theatrical tactic.
Which is?
He hires a professional troupe of actors to pretend to be a family of terrifying real vampires. Fangs, capes, the whole deal.
No way.
Yeah. Their job is to haunt the suspects in the castle and literally scare the truth out of the real killer.
That changes everything. So the entire gothic atmosphere, all those iconic scares, they were faked within the movie itself.
Exactly. And the ultimate consequence of that
is that Bela Lugosi, the man MGM hired specifically to be Dracula,
was not playing a vampire. He was playing an actor who was pretending to be a vampire.
That's next level meta. For a film from 1935, that's incredible. The world's most famous screen vampire hired to be terrifying was just a professional stand-in, a hired spook.
And what's really telling about Todd Browning, the director, is his commitment to making the fake feel real. From what we know, he didn't tell the cast, including Legacies, about the twist ending until the very end of the shoot.
Wow, why keep that a secret from your own stars?
Authenticity. He wanted them to believe they were real, supernatural monsters while they were filming. He figured their performances would carry that weight, that genuine malevolence. It helped sell the twist.
Great for the plot. I can't imagine it was great for actor morale, though.
It was a disaster for Lugosi. He had finally landed another major vampire role, a chance to prove himself outside of Universal's legal grip, and he just felt completely undercut.
He must have been furious.
Reports say he was. He begged Browning to change the ending, to make the vampires real. But Browning refused. Lugosi felt trapped. His great Gothic performance was literally turned into a punchline for a detective story.
What a heavy burden that must have been. The whole world wants you to play this one specific role, and then you find out you're actually playing a guy pretending to play that role.
It says so much about the old studio system.
Yeah.
And the difficulty of escaping a character that defines you.
But thankfully, the story of Lugosi and his true monster identity doesn't just end there, with him sulking off the set.
No, absolutely not. Lugosi eventually did get to play a real vampire again. 7 years after the Mark of the Vampire debacle, he starred in a 1944 film called The Return of the Vampire.
Finally shaking off that actor playing an actor curse.
Exactly. But for most people, his true, definitive, and honestly beloved return to the role of Dracula
The role he was born to play.
was in the 1948 comedy classic, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
And that film, even though it's a comedy, is such a beautiful closing chapter for this whole story. It brings everything full circle.
It really does, across generations of horror royalty.
Okay, so let's connect those final dots for everyone listening. In Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, you have Bela Lugosi back as Count Dracula performing alongside Lon Chaney Jr.
Who is, of course, playing the Wolfman.
And Lon Chaney Jr. is the son of Lon Chaney Sr.
The very same Lon Chaney Sr. who starred in London After Midnight.
The lost film that Todd Browning had secretly remade into Mark of the Vampire.
So you have Lugosi, who replaced Chaney Sr. back in 1935. And then, a decade later, he's sharing the screen, now fully established as the real Dracula, with Chaney's son. It's just a remarkable, serendipitous convergence of Hollywood legacies.
It's amazing. So to wrap this all up, we started with two films that looked like they were connected, but this deep dive took us through the treacherous waters of 1930s Hollywood.
We found a director recycling his own lost work, a studio weaponizing a star's face to challenge its rival.
And one of the greatest plot twists in horror history, where the legendary vampire was just an actor working for a detective.
It just reveals the deep reliance on branding and marketing, even back then. The poster mattered more than the plot.
And that's the final thought we want to leave you with.
Right. Consider the ultimate irony here. For a crucial period in his career, the actor that the entire world recognized as Dracula was so burdened by that fame that he had to fight tooth and nail just to be a legitimate monster rather than a professional stand-in.
It really makes you wonder if an actor can ever truly escape their most famous role.
Or if the myth just demands they inhabit it forever. So if this story fascinated you, we strongly encourage you to look up other famous lost films like London After Midnight and just contemplate all that celluloid history that has simply vanished, taking its secrets and twists with it.